It's 2 a.m. The house is quiet, the street outside is empty, yet your mind is louder than a stadium. Regrets march in, old mistakes replay like broken films, and fears about tomorrow crawl under the door. You try to close your eyes, but the noise does not close with you. But imagine this instead, standing in the same storm and remaining unmoved, walking into pressure and feeling your mind sharpen instead of scatter, facing chaos and still whispering to yourself, I remain my own. That is the power you've been missing, not fake positivity, not shallow comfort, but the authority to master yourself when the world cannot be mastered. The kind of calm that people notice even when you say nothing. The presence that makes them trust you because you no longer flinch. Simplify to think clearly. Clutter is not only what fills your shelves, it is what fills your head until there's no space left to breathe. Every opinion you collect, every unnecessary promise, every possession that owns more of you than you own of it. These are stones in your pocket while you're trying to swim. The world teaches us to add, to accumulate, to prove our worth by how much we carry. But the man who carries everything ends up carrying nothing with clarity. Look around your life. How many arguments do you still replay that no longer matter? How many objects gather dust but still claim rent in your mind? How many commitments do you keep alive just to avoid saying no? A man once said, "Peace begins where excess ends." He wasn't pointing at monasteries. He was pointing at the way you fill your day with noise and then wonder why silence feels impossible. I remember visiting a friend whose living room was a museum of gadgets, gifts, and trophies. Yet when his daughter wanted to play, he couldn't find a single clear space on the floor. That is what most of us do to our minds. We fill them until there's no place left to sit down and think. The Stoic path cuts in the opposite direction. It asks not, what else can I add, but what must I release so I can stand tall again? I can't judge too harshly. Open my drawer and you'll find chargers from phones I don't even own anymore. We all hoard ghosts. Simplifying is not weakness. It is an act of precision. It is not retreat. It is refinement. When you remove what is excessive, what remains begins to shine. A conversation without gossip is sharper. A room without clutter is calmer. A life without borrowed obligations is freer. The more you subtract, the more your presence grows. So here's the challenge. Before this day ends, choose one thing to put down. A drawer you empty, a meeting you decline, a habit you admit is draining you. Carry less for a week and watch how your thoughts start to breathe again. Simplicity is not poverty, it is strength. And once you feel it, you will wonder why you ever let noise convince you it was essential. When you wake tomorrow, don't ask what to add. Ask what to remove. Because the man who subtracts wisely is the man who finally begins to see clearly. And clarity is the beginning of calm. Epictetus put it simply, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Simplicity is the real abundance. 2. Stay calm when people test you. The easiest way to lose your power is to let someone else set the temperature of your soul. One careless insult, one sharp tone, one unfair comment, and suddenly your peace is gone. Most of the time, it isn't the words that hurt you, it's how quickly you hand them the keys to your mood. I once watched a man in a crowded cafe spill coffee on another's shirt. The victim could have erupted, cursed, or demanded a fight. Instead, he smiled, handed over a napkin, and said, "Happens to me all the time." The entire room relaxed. In that moment, he was the strongest man in the building. Not because of size, not because of wealth, but because he refused to let someone else's mistake own his spirit. If that coffee had landed on me, I'd love to tell you I'd stay calm. Truth is, 10 years ago, I probably would have turned it into a Shakespeare performance. Calm is not indifference. It is strategy. It means you know the difference between reacting and responding. Anyone can flare up like a match. Few can remain steady like a lamp. Matches impress for a second, lamps guide for hours. Calm is the lamp. The world will always test you. At the family table when an old wound is reopened, at the office when a colleague tries to drag you into their storm, in traffic when a stranger acts like an enemy. And in those moments, the real battle is not outside. It's in the pause before your answer. That pause is the throne of power. If you fill it with fury, you give your crown away. If you fill it with silence and reason, you remain sovereign. There is a warmth to true calm. It doesn't make you cold or distant. It makes you the person others anchor to when everything shakes. A partner trusts you more. Children feel safer around you. Even strangers sense the presence of someone who cannot be moved easily. Calm is silent authority. It doesn't shout, yet it changes the atmosphere. So test yourself today. When provoked, take one deep breath before any word leaves your mouth. That single breath is the line between chaos and clarity. Keep it, and you keep your crown, because storms will never ask your permission to come, but they don't have to enter you. The man who masters his calm is the man who masters himself. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That freedom begins the moment you choose calm over chaos. 3. Stand where your feet are. The past will beg you to look back. The future will scream for your attention. And while you argue with ghosts and shadows, the present quietly slips away. Most men waste their strength in places they can never touch, replaying yesterday, rehearsing tomorrow, and forget the only power they have is right here, in this breath. I once saw a family who had traveled far to celebrate their son's birthday. They held tickets to a historic site connected to one of his heroes, a figure he admired deeply. The boy's eyes lit with excitement, but when they arrived, the gates had just closed. For a moment, the father looked crushed. Then he knelt down, smiled, and said, "The building will be here tomorrow. Tonight, let's make our own story." Soon they were in a nearby park, acting out scenes from the boys' favorite tales, their laughter carrying into the evening. The official tour was gone, but the memory they created was even stronger. Presence had turned disappointment into joy. I've wasted entire dinners scrolling my phone, nodding at conversation I didn't hear. Presence is simple, but not easy. When you confine yourself to the present, life becomes manageable again. You don't climb the whole mountain in a single thought. You take one step. You don't relive every mistake at once. You correct the choice in front of you. You don't solve your entire future today. You prepare by being faithful to this hour. Contrary to the culture of constant forecasting, presence is not passivity. It is intensity. It is giving your full weight to the moment instead of scattering yourself across decades. Imagine if during dinner, you tasted the food fully, listened to the voice across the table completely instead of drifting into tomorrow's worries. Imagine how your relationships would change if you stood where your feet actually are. The past will never change. The future will always surprise. But the present is a gift placed in your hands every second. Stand in it, guard it, live it. Because this is the only place where strength can grow and peace can stay. And if you can master the present, every other part of life will finally begin to fall into place. 4. Let your actions speak before your mouth. Words are cheap when they arrive too quickly. Promises are easy when no weight has tested them. The world is loud with declarations, but history only remembers what was lived, not what was announced. If you want to know the truth about a man, don't ask him what he intends. Watch what he repeats when nobody's clapping. I once knew a colleague who filled every meeting with speeches about discipline and vision. People nodded at first, impressed by the sound of conviction. But weeks later, deadlines slipped, commitments faded, and his words turned hollow. At the same time, another man in the same office said little. He just kept showing up early, finishing what he touched, and quietly supporting the team. Guess who everyone trusted when the crisis hit? Not the one who preached, but the one whose work had already spoken for him. And yes, I've been that guy too, announcing plans like a press release, only to watch them expire faster than milk in the sun. Talk is like smoke. It drifts. It disappears. Action is stone. It stays. It bears weight. It can be leaned on. When you do the work, even in silence, you carve your character into something visible. And the irony is this: when you stop trying to impress, people notice more. Respect grows not from noise, but from consistency. Think of actions like ink on skin. Words are like sketches drawn in pencil. You can erase them, smudge them, or forget them in the rain. But every action is a tattoo. It marks you, it follows you, and over time, your body of work becomes the story you wear. The question is, are you etching lines of strength or scribbles that fade into regret? So ask yourself, if your voice were taken away for a month, what would your life reveal about you? Would your habits, your discipline, your small daily acts be enough to describe your values? Or would there be nothing left but empty space where your words used to be? Choose to live in such a way that explanation becomes unnecessary. Build results that speak louder than self-promotion. Because when actions and words finally match, your life becomes undeniable proof. Silent, steady, and unshakable. Five, turn problems into teachers. Most people see problems as thieves, stealing time, stealing peace, stealing joy. But the Stoic sees them as tutors, uninvited yet essential. The lesson is simple. Life doesn't just test you, it trains you. Every setback is either a wall that stops you or a mirror that shows you what you still need to become. I once stood in a long supermarket line when the register broke down. The crowd groaned, some stormed off, others muttered curses. But one father behind me turned to his daughter and started a game, adding the prices in their basket out loud, teaching her quick math. What felt like wasted time to most became a classroom for him. That line didn't just test patience, it taught resourcefulness. Meanwhile, I was the one silently calculating how much I'd overspent on snacks I didn't even plan to buy. Sometimes the lesson is humility. Obstacles carry their own curriculum. A broken plan teaches adaptation. A betrayal teaches boundaries. A loss teaches resilience. You don't have to like the lesson to receive it. You only have to stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What now?" That single shift turns frustration into instruction. Think of it this way. Problems are pressure cookers. If you seal them shut and complain about the heat, you burn. But if you let them work, they tenderize the toughest cuts of your character. Over time, the same man who once broke under pressure becomes the one who carries calm into fire. Here's something practical. When the next disruption hits, an argument, a delay, an unfair comment, pause and write 2 lines. First, what did it cost me? Second, what did it teach me? If the second line is longer, you've already won. Because the truth is, strength is not built in ease. It is forged in interruption. Every problem you survive becomes another page of wisdom in the book only you can write. And the man who learns from his problems will never walk unarmed into life again. As Epictetus reminded his students, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Every problem is less about the blow itself and more about the stance you choose after it. If you're still here, I know this message is hitting something real. Drop a comment, tell me one problem that secretly taught you more than you expected. Sharing it might be the way someone else learns to stand tall. 6. Build happiness where you stand. The world whispers that joy is always elsewhere. A bigger paycheck, a newer car, a different partner, a shinier title. And yet, the moment you grab one of those prizes, another voice in your head says, not enough. It's a race where the finish line keeps moving. No wonder so many men run themselves into the ground chasing something they never catch. I once passed a small bakery on a rainy morning. The line stretched down the block, people frustrated, umbrellas colliding. But inside the window, a young woman behind the counter laughed as she sprinkled sugar over a tray of fresh bread. You could feel it. Her happiness wasn't waiting for the rush to end or the sun to shine. She had claimed it right there, in the middle of noise and drizzle. Real happiness is built, not bought. It comes from the way you interpret your life, not from what you own. Think of joy like a well dug deep into the ground. If your well depends on rain, you'll always be thirsty. If you dig within, you'll always have water, even in drought. That's the Stoic truth. When peace rises from inside, nothing outside can steal it. Here's the twist. Happiness is less about adding pleasures and more about subtracting conditions. I'll be happy when I get the job. I'll be happy when I'm admired. Remove the when, and happiness is here. Gratitude is not a motivational slogan. It's a practice of noticing what already works. The meal that didn't burn, the friend who still checks in, the ordinary breath you're taking right now. I won't lie, I've fallen into the trap too. I've scrolled through highlight reels comparing my life to someone else's curated fiction, convincing myself I was behind. And then I'd catch myself. Behind what? Behind whom? The truth is, I wasn't behind. I was distracted from the gift already in my hands. Here's a small gift for you, an affirmation to test right now. Whisper it, even under your breath. I do not need the world to be calm for me to be calm. I do not need others to believe in me, for me to believe in myself. My peace begins within. Say it once today. Notice what shifts inside you. Hold on to that, because even the smallest whisper can become an anchor when the storm arrives. So build happiness where you stand. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Don't outsource your joy to things you can't control. Stand in the rain, smell the bread, feel the laughter when it arrives. Because the man who builds happiness from within becomes unshakable. He doesn't need applause to feel whole, and that kind of joy is the only kind that lasts. 7. Ignore drama that doesn't pay rent. Every day you're invited into other people's chaos. A coworker gossips about the boss. A neighbor complains about the fence. A cousin stirs up family feuds just to feel important. And if you're not careful, you end up renting out your mind to nonsense that never deserved a single square inch of space. I remember once getting dragged into a group chat where two friends argued over who forgot to bring snacks for a trip. The thread went on for hours, people taking sides, typing in caps. By the end, the snacks had cost less than the energy we all wasted. That's the price of drama. You pay with peace, not money. The Stoic way is simple. If it doesn't feed your character or your purpose, it doesn't deserve your attention. Think of your mind as a house. Every complaint you entertain, every argument you join, is like handing out spare keys to strangers. Before long, you can't rest in your own space. I'll admit, I used to fight every small battle, correcting people online, proving my point in pointless debates. It felt like victory, but it was just exhaustion wearing a mask. Wisdom came the day I asked myself, will this matter in 5 years? Will it matter in 5 days? Almost every time, the answer was no. Drama is like junk mail in your inbox. If you open every message, click every link, and argue with every scammer, your system collapses. But if you filter, block, and delete without hesitation, your mind stays clean, your focus stays sharp. Not everything that arrives deserves to be read. The strongest men aren't those who fight every war. They're the ones who choose their battlegrounds carefully. Sometimes silence is sharper than the loudest response. Sometimes walking away is not retreat, but mastery. Guard your peace like it's sacred, because it is. 8. Stop letting opinions pilot your day. There's a quiet kind of prison most men never notice, living by the weather of other people's opinions. One frown and you shrink. One compliment and you rise. One sarcastic comment and suddenly your whole day bends under someone else's mood. That isn't freedom, it's slavery dressed in approval. I know because I lived it. Years ago, when I was rebuilding my life at Kai's workshop, I had a habit of checking every move against what others might say. One afternoon, Jonas looked at me and laughed. "You're not carving wood, you're carving for applause." He was right. I kept reshaping the same piece, sanding it down until it no longer looked alive, just because I was afraid someone might judge it rough. In chasing approval, I destroyed the very strength of the work. That moment taught me, opinions are reflections of other people's fears, not evidence of your worth. They can advise you, warn you, sometimes even guide you. But the moment you let them pilot your choices, you stop living your own story. It's like handing the steering wheel of your motorcycle to a stranger on the street. You'll end up somewhere, but rarely where you belong. I'll admit, letting go of applause felt terrifying. Silence can feel like rejection, but silence is also where real confidence is forged. The day I stopped needing to be seen was the day I started seeing myself clearly. So here's the challenge. Before your next decision, pause and ask, does this align with my values or just with their applause? If it's only applause, let it go. Approval fades, but alignment lasts. The man who roots himself in integrity becomes unshakable, even when the crowd turns away. Because at the end of the day, the only voice you must answer to is the one you hear in the quiet, your own. Or as Epictetus warned, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Freedom begins the moment you stop living for their applause. 9. Be patient enough to become solid. We live in an age addicted to speed. Scroll, refresh, chase, upgrade. If it doesn't happen instantly, we call it failure. But anything worth becoming cannot be rushed. Growth, mastery, even healing, all demand time. The Stoics knew this. No great thing is created suddenly. They weren't being poetic. They were describing the very rhythm of strength. I once met an old mason who had spent decades restoring a crumbling cathedral. Tourists passed by impatiently, asking why the work was taking so long. He smiled and pointed to the stones. "If I lay them fast, the cracks return. If I lay them slow, my grandchildren will still see this standing." His craft was invisible to most: dust, mortar, patience. But the strength he built would outlast every hasty complaint. Think of patience like firewood drying. Chop it too soon and it smokes, it sputters, it dies before it warms anyone. Give it time and it burns steady through the night. The same is true for us. Without patience, every effort fizzles. With it, your work, your relationships, your character, all become fuel that sustains. I've ruined things by rushing too. Starting projects I wanted finished in weeks, pushing conversations that needed months of trust, demanding results that only years could give. Each time I ended up with ashes instead of fire. The mason's lesson still echoes in my head. What's rushed rarely lasts. The man who learns to wait doesn't fall behind. He becomes unshakable because what he builds is meant to endure. If this journey has given you strength, make sure you subscribe and share it forward. Because calm doesn't spread through noise. It spreads through men who practice it together. 10. Keep going. Even when it's hard, life will test you in ways you never scheduled. Plans collapse, friends vanish, health falters, money thins. The temptation is always the same: quit, shrink, retreat. But the Stoics were clear. Obstacles aren't detours. They are the road itself. What tries to stop you is secretly shaping you. I once joined a small group on a mountain climb. The first few hours were easy: clear paths, fresh legs, laughter echoing off the rocks. But as the slope steepened, people began to peel away. Blisters formed, the air thinned. Every step felt heavier than the last. One man finally collapsed, saying, "I can't see the top. I'm done." Our guide simply smiled and said, "Don't look at the peak. Look at the next step." And so we kept moving, slow, steady, sometimes in silence. Hours later, we stood on the summit, breathless not just from the altitude, but from the truth. The mountain was never conquered. We were. Persistence is not about charging like a bull. It's about outlasting, like a river carving through stone, not with force, but with constancy. Each day you choose to rise again. You teach yourself that quitting is not your language. Even when progress looks invisible, effort compounds quietly. Here's the practice. When you feel like stopping, ask yourself 3 questions. Why did I start? What would I regret if I gave up? And what one small step can I take right now? Often, that single step is all it takes to push the darkness back. The truth is, strength is not built on the days when everything works. It's built on the nights when nothing does, yet you still move. Keep going, even slowly, even clumsily, even without applause, because grit will carry you longer than talent, and endurance will outlive luck. One day you'll look back and realize it wasn't the victory that changed you. It was the decision to keep walking when everything inside you wanted to stop. That is the essence of calm strength: quiet, steady, unbroken. And that is how a man becomes unshakable. Calm is not something you stumble into. It's built, step by step, choice by choice, in the storms you refuse to let inside. You've walked through 10 keys, not theories, but living tools: simplicity, stillness, presence, action, patience, persistence. Each one is a stone, and together they form the ground you can finally stand on without shaking. But remember this: philosophy means nothing until it's lived. The next test will not come with warning. It will come as an insult, a delay, a closed door, a weight you didn't ask for. That is your moment. Not to perform, not to preach, but to prove to yourself that you've taken the keys into your hands. The man who stays calm in a noisy world becomes rare. The man who refuses to be ruled by chaos becomes respected. And the man who keeps walking, even when it hurts, becomes unshakable. That is the quiet strength the Stoics pointed to. That is the strength you can claim now. So as you leave this lesson, don't wait for the world to soften. It won't. Instead, decide to harden your clarity and soften your heart at the same time. Calm mind, steady will, open spirit. That's your shield, your compass, your freedom. If this spoke to you, carry it into your next hour, your next decision, your next storm. And when the world tries to pull you into noise, remember, the calmest man in the room is always the strongest. Keep walking. Your stillness is your power.